Hello, we are Geeks Assembled, and we've gathered here again, and it's Who Night, and tonight's episode is going to be a Peter Davison story, which is To Doomsday. Now let's kick straight off. Let's see what Lee makes of this story. Lee, is To Doomsday one of your favourites?
You just have to read the title of it, To Doomsday. It's such an epic, explosive title for this 4-part story. Maybe that's why it was changed, because the original title was called Flesh Turn. So they had to go with something epic and destructive. To Doomsday. And I've got to say, these 4 episodes are the most boring thing I have ever watched in history. And that's saying a lot. And there is a lot of boring episodes in Doctor Who.
You've not watched Series 11?
Well, I've heard rumours. I've seen reviews.
I'm only kidding, by the way.
But this story is the one that put me off the Davison era. I watched Castrovalva when it first was broadcast. I thought, benefit of the doubt, it's the first, it's his first story, like every Doctor, you just get into the things. To Doomsday came along, and I thought, what the hell is going on? Just boring, dull. I said to Ali the other day, even the sets are bland, dark, beige. There's no colour there.
Enough of Geeks Assembled. What did you make of the Doctor Who episode?
Even the characterizations with the main characters, like Nyssa and Adric and Tegan, they were annoying. And Adric was at his most annoying as well, and badly acted. The sets was awful. There was just, I can understand the story about, automated, all their memories are in these discs, so like that, and I understand that. But it was just, the story just went nowhere. Cliffhanger. One cliffhanger was, the android, this is me. Is that a cliffhanger? No, I don't think it is. Boring, studio-bound story, just dull, boring. I went to sleep again. I went to sleep in 1982, and I went to sleep again in 2019 watching this. Over to you, one of my favourite stories, Alid.
God, you're really sleep deprived then. For the last time you went to sleep was 1982. Well, thanks for that, Lee. I'm glad you enjoyed the story. Let's see if Stephen Price enjoyed it just as much.
No, I hated it. I thought it was boring. What the hell those helmets were for? Oh, God. It was terrible. That has got to be one of the worst of the classic series I've seen. Not Davison anyway. And I don't rush anytime soon. Maybe in about 10 years' time I might put it back on, but no, it's not on my watch list. It was, Daladric was just annoying, Why didn't somebody just kill him off, in the episode?
Spoilers, he does.
Huh?
Spoilers, he does.
Yeah. But, the acting was just terrible. It was like CCTV at that time, with sound. Terrible.
High praise from Stephen in Wales. Let's go to Alex and Susan to see if they enjoyed it equally as much.
I actually like the story. I think the problem is it needed a lot of spicing up. To Doomsday makes no sense, first of all. Second of all, it should have been 3 parts. The other amazing thing is, this is almost like a Tomorrow People reject script. And the funny thing is, you have 3 people in the story that were also in the Tomorrow People with just as bad a story, if not worse. You also have to remember this is one of Peter Davidson's first episodes as the Doctor. He was also working in almost, what is it, 2 other TV shows at the time that were more or just as popular. Yeah, they unfortunately the idea is good. You know, you end up getting stranded on a spaceship. They didn't all look bad. Some of the sets look bad, some of it didn't. The idea of a floating camera is actually pretty cool and very scary. You have these 3 frogs that think they run the universe. The main evil frog is actually an award-winning actor. It's amazing they got all that makeup on him. And he's very tyrannical. The idea of the 4 other humans, which are actually robots or androids, is not a bad idea. But the thing that also slows it down is not only Adric with his, Master Monarch or Majesty Monarch is the savior of the world or whatever, of the earth, is also the fact that they went too long into the cultural representations, which unfortunately slows it down to a crawl. It's not a bad idea. It's the way that they did it. And the direction was very pedantic, unfortunately. So by the 4th episode, you can kind of tell they're rushing everything to finish it. And that sort of detracts. Also, Nyssa was a very good actress and a very good companion, but almost through the entire series, they don't really have her do a lot. So, they had ideas there. They just weren't able to really develop it. And then the fact is, the other thing that was creepy was not only the secret sort of room that they had to talk in, which Monarch also knew that, the Doctor was covering up the camera and jamming the sound, which is silly after the second time. But the fact that when Adric and Tegan are arguing, Adric should have had a concussion because he accidentally hits his head, but he recovers very quickly. And I kind of went, wow, that's very awkward if you think about it, and very unrealistic because he should have been really hurt. So then the other thing is, like, I've shown this to other people and they go, what are these weird? And then if it's alien technology, how come Tegan's able to fly the TARDIS? I mean, that makes no sense, actually, if you think about it.
Except for the TARDIS liked her. And
Okay,
the TARDIS wanted to fix it.
Okay, but you understand what I'm saying. The only other part that was really good was the fact that, and I talked to scientists about this, as a matter of fact, when the Doctor throws the cricket ball against the ship and uses the force of the ball to go back to the TARDIS door, that's actually based in some physics. So it's like it is, but it isn't. It sort of works, but it sort of doesn't. You also have the weird sort of compliment that the Doctor gives the Chinese, which is fine because the Doctor isn't racist, and I've never thought that he was. But remember that this is 1981 we're talking about. And the Doctor says, the Chinese are the most populous race on Earth. Do you think you have a chance when Monarch realizes that? And I went, whoa, this is supposed to be a kid's show, dude. So the funny thing is, the guy that's playing the Chinese representative is Kato from the Pink Panther movies, and he was also in the Tomorrow People as Peter Davidson was as well. So it's very, it's very strange. It's like a very weird pretzel kind of weird, and then some of the effects are good and some of them are not. Like the outside, when you see the ship at first, it looks good. When you see the equipment, that looks great. The floating cameras are good. But then it just kind of, you know what I mean? It just sort of, it's too bad. It's too bad they couldn't have had somebody. And I'm sorry, if I had the money, I would have redone To Doomsday and Vengeance on Varos. And if they had had the right money and the right special effects, I bet that really would have been, superb. But the ideas are there. It's just the execution isn't as good as it should be.
Okay, about the extravehicular activity, any science fiction show anywhere with an EVA is instantly one of my longtime favorites. Because if you take a person outside of the safety and the protection of a spaceship and put them in deepest, darkest space, and even with like a maskless space helmet like Fivey's got, I mean, it's a real risk. And so I really like those. I like those in real life, and I like those in science fiction. And I also like the idea that he was tethered off with just a rope and not anything more technologically amazing. It was just like, here, let's tie a rope and go on out there. But like, how did he know that he'd even have enough rope? You know, that's the other thing that's really funny, is like, these things are convenient, and so that's fun. Anyway, the androids, it was like Westworld meets Chinese world meets. It was just like, let's do a sort of an Epcot Center or an expo, a world expo, world fair in the middle of a spaceship, which is, I guess, pretty cool. But the reasoning was very, very shall we say, I don't know what I should say. So I'm just going to move on from there. There were so many cool possibilities in For To Doomsday. The three megalomaniacal characters who were going to take over everything on Earth in order to reseed their population or download their intellect into whatever they wanted to. That's been done a lot, and I like it, but this one just didn't work very well. I do think Adric was I think that what they were trying to do there was a bit like what they did with Turlo later, was something that was like, oh, I'll set the young character against the Doctor. And so that kind of well, this one didn't work. It barely worked with Turlo because Turlo was a bit older. But I mean, I guess you can chalk it all up to the Master, you know, on some level. The Master messed with Adric's mind. And Nissa didn't have much to do. And I do like the fact that Tegan was able to fly the TARDIS, because it means that the TARDIS was the one who wanted her to fly and not her. I mean, not her abilities, nothing about her. But pretty cool. Anyway, so those are my theories and my bits about it. So over to you.
Yep, thank you, Susan. I think I've been to everybody. Oh, God. So I used to like this as a kid many years ago. And I've rewatched it since quite a few times. And it's crap. It just cannot... I'm sorry. This episode is boring. And Lee is correct. The sets. I mean, I don't know why I used to like this episode. When you're a kid, you just see everything more interesting and things like that. But the sets really are dull. I do like the frog monsters. I do like them, kind of. But the story around them isn't great. The script is bad. The script is bad. It just needed to be worked over a few more times or just completely binned, because it just doesn't work. As people have said, Adric is, well, he's you know, he is one of the worst companions, isn't he? Let's be honest. And he was never, he's liked because he's disliked. You know, you kind of feel sorry for him. Yeah, this story, I mean, we're picking each of the worst episodes from each Doctor, but this is not Peter Davison's worst story. Personally, I think there's two worse than this. The one is Warriors of the Deep, that is bad. And that literally kills the Silurians and the Sea Devils. That butchers them. And the other one is Time Flight. Now, that is truly horrendous. So I have to give this credit for not being Time Flight. But that doesn't mean it's good. What's the matter, Alex?
No, the actors have said in the past, and like I said, unfortunately, you can see what they were trying to do, and like I said, the ideas were there. It's just that it wasn't well developed.
And you got to remember, this is Peter Davison's first story that he filmed.
Yeah. Well, the other thing
you can tell, you can tell it's his first story that he filmed. Actually, I think.
Well, I mean, like I said, and it also depends, too, because the other issue is, I mean, I kind of wonder, because some of the jokes are very much wordplay, and some of them are very dry wit, and some of them are not, and I think the other
it just felt I don't know why it was 4 parts.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't have been 4 parts.
Long and boring, and then a lot of talking.
Well,
I wouldn't have even said 3. I would say just make it 2 parts.
Well, the other thing too is
and
then
bring in an interesting threat. Bring in an interesting threat.
Well, isn't that why you only chose the first and the last episodes for your?
Yeah, because I admit that I had space issues, but also it was the fact that it should have been more tightly edited. The other issue is that unfortunately Nyssa was a very good character, but they didn't give her enough to do. They didn't change her wardrobe. She's wearing almost the same thing for like 10 episodes. Or more.
I never liked that. Liked that.
Tegan's too loud. Adric's too whiny and chauvinistic. And then the other problem is that it's so bad in the story that the Doctor says, I'm not telling you anything until I know that you're with me. Well, he's a companion. He's supposed to be with the Doctor. I mean, what the heck? You know, I mean, I can understand if maybe Adric, because he was an orphan.
No, because of the Master.
Wait a minute. Because of what Monarch was saying. But the other thing, too, is what he's saying is a West world, because you can't get rid of disease and all this other, stuff. You could try, but you're not going to get rid of all of it. So,
there's no real threat.
No, there is. But the problem is, if it wasn't for Stratford Johns and what's his name, Philip Locke, the whole thing would have been extremely painful. It was already painful.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for the fact of Peter Davison, Janet Fielding, and Philip Locke and Stratford Johns, the whole thing would have been, on the level of a really, really bad movie with really bad, sets. And the thing is, they just rushed it, and they shouldn't have. Yeah, and Time Flight is awful too, because they couldn't use the effects. Then they spent too much money on showing the Concorde. And then the other weird thing they have Nyssa do is sort of, I don't know if she's screaming in some scenes, and then she's, she has premonition and other scenes. It's all over the place, and it's
But this era of Doctor Who had a lot of problems with bland sets like this.
Well, that's why they have to do a lot of talking.
I mean,
Yeah, look at the set,
let's see.
'cause you'll turn it right off. No, they tried though. They tried, Alan, but the problem is they couldn't get. I mean, I do like the actors. I don't think it's the actors' fault per se. I think it was what they were given. And Peter Davidson is a good actor. He's always been a good actor.
No.
No, Matthew Waterhouse,
but
unfortunately.
Matthew Waterhouse, he's not a good actor. I'm sorry.
Okay,
he's not
but
a good actor.
The other actors were good, but the problem is they couldn't find a way to have real development. And then they were trying to balance between the four. And then the other issue is that Peter Davidson is an old doctor, but he's the first young version of the Doctor, or a young body. And like I said, I showed this to other people, and they went, this has so much potential, but they wasted it. So they stopped watching Davidson. Now, when I show them Caves of Andronzini, they loved it.
Andronzini,
Why couldn't it have been the whole, his whole season like that? That would have been great.
I agree with that. Yeah,
so
I 100%.
They couldn't quite get it right, or maybe they were trying to do too much. They were trying to be funny 1 minute, scary. It just didn't work quite.
Lee wants to butt in.
See, the thing what they made the makers of Doctor Who back then, when Tom Baker left, was they made a decision to make the stories more scientifically based.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong thing to do. You want science fiction.
But wait there, didn't Barry Letts try to do that?
He was more ecological with his.
But I think he wanted to put more sci-fi in.
More sci-fi, science fiction, but not scientifically based in fact.
Oh, all right, I get what you mean. Yeah, I think.
Well, no, like
this is what they said. They wanted to build up and make it more scientifically factual, and if you start doing that, the stories become dull.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
No, I mean it wasn't.
It does depend. It can be done correctly. It can be implemented correctly, like other stories have implemented it. Right.
The issue is, it's not totally bad on the face of it. It's the problem was that they didn't have the budget or the real writing to do it. If you could get 3 frogs to run a spaceship with 10,000 cells or 10,000 silicon chips, and then turn those into androids that can live for thousands of years, that's not a bad idea. It is a little Westworld, yes, but it's not a bad idea. But the problem was they couldn't do it. Yeah. They couldn't do it and then blend it in with Doctor Who and his companions as well as they should have.
But there again, you're saying they didn't have budget. This was his first story of his first season. They had the budget, and that's what they produced.
Yeah, I mean,
it's usually the last 2 stories of the season what have not the budget.
The budget gets taken away. Yeah, they use the budget on other stories. Yeah.
This is what they filmed first, To Doomsday, and what have they spent the money on?
Luckily, it didn't air first.
Yeah, that's true.
It was it was To Doomsday, Kinder, then Castrovalva, I think it was.
See, I like Kinder. I do like Kinder, and I thought the sets in Kinder were very good.
Even if that was studio based.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, again, I showed this to people that they liked Baker more than Davidson, but even they said, what's the deal with the squabbling? What's the deal with the bad, budget? What's the deal with, the story's not being developed? It's too English stereotypical, But of course, they're not fans.
But I don't think the sets look bad because of the budget. I don't think the sets look bad because of the budget.
Well, no, but I mean,
they're just bad sets.
Yeah. Well, for instance,
like Doctor Who's never really had much of a budget, and some of the sets look really quite impressive. I mean, if you look back at the original TARDIS, they had no money back then. Look how great that looks. Now that is a good set.
Okay, but
we can't hear you, Susan. You're too far away.
She's wondering if Stephen wants to chime in.
Oh yeah, and Stephen, let's move on to favourite moments.
Favorite moments. There's only one favorite moments where the guy pulls off his part of his face to reveal he's like a robot.
Yeah, I like that bit. Yeah.
And I was just thinking now, can you imagine this was a missing episode that he found it?
Yeah, I'd rather it just stay missing.
Yeah.
And not even animate it. Don't even bother.
Yeah.
Well, it's better than Time Flight, and Warriors of the Deep, but that's not saying much.
Well, Alex is in agreement with me. Thank God Alex is in agreement with me, because they are worse. I have to admit, those two episodes are worse than this. I would rather watch this for the rest of my life on repeat than watch Time Flight.
We need to go.
Yeah, I would rather watch this
than Geeks Assembled.
No, than any Matt Smith episode.
Oh,
I thought you had them on DVD, Stephen.
Oh no.
Thought you had Matt Smith on DVD.
Yeah, I got some news now regarding that. I got all of Peter Davison, David Tennant, Eccleston. I got rid of all the Matt Smith.
Well, the other problem is the other problem is that Peter Davison had other shows he was doing, plus he had to compete with the Tom Baker worship that was still there. Yeah, that was still there. So he
was doing other shows while he was doing this.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Was he? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
was he still doing All Creatures Great and Small?
He was.
All Creatures Great. Going All Creatures Great and Small, Hold the Fort, and Sink or Swim.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he just did this when the job came. When he came a doctor. Oh. I mean, he's a really good actor, but I think this was too early in his career.
Well, I just think that he came upon a situation where they didn't really know what they were doing with this story. They didn't really have a firm grasp of where they wanted to end up. They kind of had to finish with the doctor and his companions just leaving and not resolving the issue, except for to defeat the 3 frog people. But they didn't have that isn't a strong enough thing to make the whole thing, sort of, like Alex said, satisfying. And so, and I mean, the fact that they pitted Adric, I mean, yes, it came after, in terms of his storyline after Castrovalva, where he gets abducted by the Master. But I mean, because
that was quite kinky stuff. That was, wasn't it?
But because
that really was.
Because Matthew Waterhouse hadn't done that other one first. Like that on the internet. He didn't actually have any gravitas in this to fight the Doctor. So it just didn't seem like he was. I guess I didn't realize that they were shot out of order. But anyway.
Yeah. No, they're shot out of order. Yeah.
So
Alex, have you had your favorite moments? I can't remember where we are.
I mean, like I said, I do like the story. It could have used tighter editing. It didn't seem to have a lot of places to go. The ideas were there. This could have been a very good story. It's just that, I mean, the cast is good. The cast isn't horrible. But the other problem is you have a little bit of the, how can I say it? You got that quote-unquote OTT acting, especially from Matthew Waterhouse, that starts getting very annoying.
No, how dare
you have the fight between, you have what, 3 arguments between him and Tegan, and then the third argument he hits his head on the floor. And I was like, yeah, actually, that's really, over the top. So, it had potential. It really did, but they didn't seem to develop it. And if it was going to be 4 stories, they should have either made Stratford Johns more threatening, or they should have made the threat more realistic. And I think it would have helped the story quite a bit. And then the problem is they're rushing with the android concept. They're rushing with the cultural representatives, which unfortunately, really lost steam after a while. You know what I mean? So it's a shame. They have a good idea there. They have good actors there. They have a good cast. But then I think they're trying to say, okay, we gotta fill it in. And so you have a lot of arguing and debate and stuff like that, where you should have shown like more. It should have had more threat, and I think it would have been more interesting. It would have been more more interesting to the viewer. So you have a lot of scenes that are kind of filler. And then the problem is it's 1981, so when he shows his face and his circuit board, it's not really threatening, where if you could do that with today's effects, that would have been scary. You know what I mean? So some of it's there and some of it isn't. And the in theory, it's great that the doctor goes out, with a rope with Adric trying to watch, and he actually fights the androids and sort of wins, even though the doctor had to come back and help him with one. That's not a bad idea. But the problem is the way they did it was bad. And then they have Stratford Johns.
Yeah.
No, it's like, no, the first time, okay. We didn't need a second and a third, just no. So it suffers from editing. It suffers from direction. It suffers from the threat doesn't feel real. So you're kind of left with, debating in a weird looking set with a great cast and a little bit of weird makeup on. And it sort of enforces the stereotype of Doctor Who doing, aliens that are made of styrofoam cup painted green kind of stereotype. It doesn't exactly
At least it wasn't
help.
in a quarry.
Oh yeah, that's true. That was a heck of a step up from a quarry. But like I said, it's a shame because you have a good
I kind of wish
cast.
it was in a quarry.
I kind of like a quarry.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I like
think
a
it should have
quarry,
been
but
in a
I also like an EVA.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like Vengeance on Varos was very similar. But the thing is, you had Syl, and he was a great villain. You had the bald guy.
He was a great villain.
You had the governor who was kind of, but you also had the threat because he was sitting in the chair with the laser beams coming down. You know what I mean?
And you have that great cliffhanger when you think the Doctor's dead.
Right. Yeah. So
there's that great cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Episode 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're watching, but you're not sure of what you're watching. And I showed this to people, and they're going, "Now that's good." You know what I mean? They said all it needed was a little bit more budget, and it would have been great. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like Doctor Who has the ideas there. It's just that the way they direct it sometimes, and the budget is gone, and so it's like it's trying to do so much with so much less. And I think that's why the revival did better, because at least the effects were very decent compared to the past. Not 100%.
Well, if you look back at Russell T Davis's era and now, or even Moffat's, the effects are quite dated now.
Yeah, but they look better than the 1980s.
I don't know. In some cases, I'm not too sure. Actually,
but like I said, that's the other issue too. That's another reason why Classic Who is criticized, because of the 4-parters. If with the seventh Doctor also had the bad background music as well. So if they could have fixed that and not made it all 4 parts, but made it 3 parts, and then like from the 5th Doctor on, if everything could have been 3 parts, that probably would have helped a lot of stories. Not all of them, but it would have helped. And Time Flight didn't need. Warriors of the Deep, that needed an overhaul very badly. I mean, at least,
Alex,
at least Bygone and Monarch looked good compared to the Micro or whatever that was in Warriors of the Deep. That it just looked like a mascot for some sort of weird, team of people that play in the sewers, or maybe it should have been with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something. I don't know. But so I mean, but it's also easier because we're not producers or directors to look back and criticize it. I mean, there was a lot of good ideas in British TV, and there was a lot of good TV shows. They just didn't have the budget and the foresight in many cases to look back and say, we should have worked on this story more or whatever, And they didn't have the time.
So, Alex, what's your favorite moments for To Doomsday?
I just said. I've been saying.
Oh,
I mean, it's it has a good cast, it has a good idea, and and it could have been so much better, but they just didn't do it quite right.
Yeah, can you just go through some of your favorite moments again?
No, it's bad. Good.
Has Susan had hers?
No, she hasn't.
My favorite moment is the EVA and the faceless mask and the outside of the spaceship and the space stuff. And I love the TARDIS floating there in space. That's about beautiful. Anyway, those are my bits.
Well, that was quick. Let's go to Lee.
My favourite moments: opening theme music, closing credits. I hated the incidental music in all the episodes. It was overpowering, and it was too synthy and for me. That was it, really. But it's Davison's last season is far superior to his first two.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay. You do get a clunker every season. You did get a clunker in his final season, but it just goes to show I do appreciate his Doctor now, thanks to Big Finish Audio. He's far better doing the audios. You can say because you haven't got the budget restraints what these have. There's nothing, no good points for me. Davison's a good actor. I mean, I like Tegan. It's just this story just didn't give anything to any of the characters to do meaningfully. They were just like wandering around corridors in bland, dull, grey corridors. Stratford John's a brilliant actor. Monarchia, costume I'm not so good on. Looks a bit cheap and from a 1970s disco. Persuasion, Enlightenment, Sapphire and Steel ripoff, I would say. Because it just looked like Sapphire and Steel design. That's it really. There's nothing really good for me about this one.
Yeah, I like the frogs.
Have you ever kissed one?
I like frogs.
Turn into a prince?
No,
sadly not. Still waiting. There's a lot of squashed frogs along our road, though. So who knows?
It reminds me of frog's legs. I don't know if you've ever eaten frog's legs or licked a frog like they made fun of in some cartoons.
No, I've never licked a frog, Alex. I'll leave that to you.
Okay. There was a frog in the series 11, though.
There was a frog in series 11. I like that frog. I love that episode as well. I thought that was a great episode of series 11. That's much better than this one. Yeah. So, for that, I might up the score because I like frogs, and now it's brought me to think of It Takes You Away from series 11, which I absolutely love. So this might get a high score now. Yeah. Speaking of scores, let's go to Stephen for his score.
It gets a 3 from me.
3.
Wow, 3. Even Alex is shocked. Let's go to Alex and Susan.
All right. Well, I'll give it a 6 for the EVA. Because anything with an EVA is more than halfway there because it's super exciting. Those are super scary. Oh my gosh! And then I'm gonna also, and for the TARDIS floating there in space and stuff, a 6 is great. So there's my score.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this a 7 to 10, and it would have gotten higher if they'd done more and tighter.
Wait, whoa, 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 whoa. A 7 to 10.
Yeah, if they could have done more with it.
How
But
can you give it look, Alex,
Yeah.
you either
It has
give
to
it a
be
7 or you give it a 10.
I'll give this a 7, but as I said, it's because of what they could have done with it as opposed to what they should have. Like I said, I've said the same thing. It is a great cast. It is a great idea.
Oh, we know.
All that stuff. It's just that they didn't quite get it right. They tried though. They did try, but it just didn't. And it should have been tighter editing and a greater threat from Monarch, and not just him
Yeah,
being
it should have been a
very,
great threat. I agree with that.
very bossy. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, is Lee going to go higher or lower than a 7?
Well, in my opinion, this story is worse than the Sensorite. I
don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I gave the Sensorites a 4.
Oh.
It's just so I'm going to give it because of the theme music's always been good, so I like the theme music.
That's 1 point.
Guest actors Stratford John, actress Philip Locke
That's
as
2
well.
points.
That's it really. I'll give it 2.
2. Oh,
That's it. I can't anything else what's positive about it. It's utter rubbish.
yeah, I think that's the lowest you've given a Doctor Who story.
No, I think I gave. What was the? What was it Capaldi's listen? Was it Listen?
Did you give that a 1 then?
I gave that a 1. I think. Yeah.
But we did this for To Doomsday on the other channel.
I can't remember
What I would love to go back and see if it's still there and see if you.
It must have been wiped by nasty little frogs.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, what did I give it? I can't even remember what I gave it, but I think I gave it much higher than I'm going to give it now. Which I'm going to give this. I think this is just as bad as the Sensorites. This is just as boring. And the Sensorites was boring as anything. Honestly, it bored the living daylights out of me. So I'm going to give it a 4. Because as I say, it's not the worst story. And as well, Colony in Space, which we reviewed, that is diabolical. That is absolutely diabolical. I wish they would wipe that episode from Doctor Who history, and it should never be spoken about or seen or heard again.
What are we on about?
Colony in Space.
Don't know. I've never heard of it. Is
Yeah.
it a mystery episode?
Yeah. Remember, Alex, you've never heard of it.
No, I heard of it.
Never heard of it.
No, you've never heard of it, Alex.
Yeah, let me refresh the memory here. How many episodes in that quote unquote classic Doctor Who, how many stories did they have? Did they have 20 a year or 25 a year? Or was it just about like 18 or something? Didn't they have a lot of stories per season?
Roughly, it was about 26 episodes a year, but then it dwindled.
Yeah.
So now we don't even get 10.
So that's the other question is unfortunately with classic Doctor Who you had anywhere from what is it? You had anywhere from 20 to 35 stories, and now you're lucky if you get 12. So
Yeah, but surely if they just cut like this serial out, they would have had more money for the other stories.
Well, I do like the
Why
cereal.
didn't they just do that?
I do like the cereal, but like I said, we we didn't like Time Flight. We didn't like what is it?
Yeah.
Warriors.
Time
TV.
Flight.
I mean,
Remind me, please.
I know some people that
Georgia.
I know some people that didn't like Modern Undead, and they didn't like.
No, I don't mind that one. I quite like that one.
I know some people that didn't like Snake Dance.
No, I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that one. Yeah.
So that could have been done with some tighter editing as well, even though the effects were good for the time. But
I enjoyed Snake Dance.
So, I mean, it's that's the other thing too. I mean, this is 1980s television sci-fi. It's not as advanced as 1990s or 2000s. But then the other drawback is, everything's so expensive now. So I mean, you're talking upwards of what, $1 million, $2 million, an episode, where they couldn't do that. They didn't think that way in the 70s and the 80s. They just didn't.
It's $1 million an episode, I think. Yeah.
So, well, except for maybe
it's $1 million an episode.
Yeah, except for maybe Battlestar Galactica, but that was one of the.
No. I mean Doctor Who.
Yeah.
No, I mean Doctor Who recently is $1 million an episode. I think.
Right,
Yeah.
and then what is it? Star Trek: The Next Generation started getting to be $1 million or more. And but I mean, almost every sci-fi TV series has had episodes that aren't considered very good.
Yeah, and Doctor Who's had plenty of them. Right, on that note, and even Lee's pussy's nodded off. So that must mean it's time to go. So tell us below what you made of To Doomsday. And remember to hit that like button and the subscribe button to stay up to date with all our videos, because we do upload once a week. Actually, twice a week. Yeah, twice a week. There you go. Double helping. Look after yourself. Take care. And we will see you next